Hi guys, my name is Kellyanne and I'm from the Fascination. We have a wonderful interview here today.
Thank you for having me, Kellyanne.
Okay.
My name is Nadina. I'm an ecological engineer and technologist, speaker and podcaster. And what I do in my work is I apply emerging technologies to urban ecology. And I do that so that we can better map, monitor, manage, and ultimately reconnect people to urban nature. And I call that the Internet of Nature. There's really been no time like today in terms of how important we're finding these green spaces we're in, especially the year and a half that we've had of the pandemic. I think everyone's really come to appreciate the green spaces that they hopefully have around their corner, and if they don't, they've become hyper aware that they don't have green spaces close enough to them, because I think for a lot of people they've just become an extension of trying to ease the mind and move the body and just have this feeling of reconnecting with the earth, and that can sound quite spiritual, but I think especially after the year and a half we've had, it's never been more apparent just how important these green spaces are just to our overall physical health and mental well-being.
We can see that across our community, people really concentrating on the community outdoor space through kind of design and creating community wellbeing programs to support the students living in their buildings. But I think that's happening in everybody's life. You spoke about the tech revolution and how important that is with the urbanisation and also the growing numbers of people on the globe.
Yeah.
But I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about the relationship between those two and how that's impacting our cities.
Yeah, I think we've never before in human history seen these two kind of concurrent trends. On the one hand, the mass urbanization that we've seen in, especially the last decades, but also just, the massive technological revolution that has helped power that urbanization as well. We've created, it's allowed us to put a man on the moon, it's given us the internet, it's provided us this new way of living and working, and I think as much as we've been able to enjoy those benefits, at the same time, I think we've become hyper aware of perhaps the negative effects that technological revolution and especially that mass urbanization can have. But what I'm very keen on focusing on now is moving away from this dichotomy that we've had between this is where humans live, these are cities, and that's nature, and that's separate, and it's two separate entities, and if you feel like you need some time in the forest, well then you take yourself out there to that other place and you reconnect and then you come back. And I think that that's just become so rapidly different. It's not what people want anymore. Cities have become almost the default habitat of humankind, and at the same time kind of the default biotope. If we look at humans as one of the species that we share Earth with, cities are the habitat that they live in, and therefore we must try to create better ones, and ones that facilitate not only human needs but also the needs of all the other species that we share the city with, especially for the benefit of humans themselves as well. I mean, green spaces linked to pregnant women that live closer to green spaces have higher birth weight babies. Just 15 minutes a day in green can reduce your cortisol and your stress levels. There are just so many different ways that green just makes us happier and healthier people, and it's kind of become that determinant to happier and healthier lives in a way that I almost think it should become a human right. Having that access and exposure to nature is really, I think, what's going to make a marked change on the next generations to come. I think it's always interesting to kind of look at, if we know how important it is to have nature in cities, why is it that that's still a struggle? Why is it that trees that we plant are still dying prematurely? Why is it that it's difficult to protect these green spaces? And from there, perhaps look at technology not as a destination of moving towards this very smart, techno-heavy city, but rather as a tool to hopefully be able to get to the destination we want, which I think is safe and healthy, resilient places for all of us to live. And I think one of the key problems within that is the fact that we lose 15 to 20% of all newly planted trees every single year. So that means that almost nearly a fifth of the trees that we plant every year in cities don't make it within the first year. And that's kind of bizarre, because I feel like, especially if we look at the building and the construction industry, if we were building houses or buildings and, you know, nearly a fifth of the bricks disintegrated after a year, we would never accept that. And it's quite bizarre that we've come to accept that from our green infrastructural assets. And one of the key components of why they're not surviving is just a structural underwatering. Of course, there's a lot of other issues. There's a lack of good soil volumes, a lack of just enough soil quantity. Sometimes, you know, the age-old adage in urban forestry and arboriculture is plant a $5 tree in a $50 hole. So really put that investment into those growing conditions. But, you know, once you've got, you know, the soil and the growing conditions figured out, we're watering trees based on kind of a gut feeling. And that's just not possible, especially when we want to green our cities to the degree that we do. We have mayors all over the world, you know, putting out these big campaigns of we want to plant 1 million trees, 5 million trees, 10 million trees over the next couple of years. We can't do that unless we actually focus on bringing these newly planted trees to maturity. And on the flip side of that, protecting mature trees as well. So one of the technologies that I'm really excited about is working with Internet of Things soil sensors, which you can actually install as you're planting a new tree. And they actually give you a water alarm, an alert when the tree needs to be watered. So that can go to not just to the tree care manager, but could also go, for example, to citizens or students and people that work in the area, so that they can actually be engaged actively with tree care, which is so important, but in an evidence-based way. Because I think a lot of people want to get involved, but they're not quite sure how. They don't know if it's actually adding anything. This is a way to kind of get that feedback loop of data, which I think is so critical to not only understanding, okay, is the tree actually surviving better, and can we actually get, you know, the people that live and work there involved as well.
I think I need at least 5 of those in my house, and maybe one for myself for when I need watering. But yeah.
No, I agree. We could all use a little bit of mine to drink more water, that's for sure.
So you kind of touched on a little bit about how, I guess stakeholders can get involved. I guess student accommodation and universities are growing rapidly. There's more students arriving in our cities and attending universities. And these kind of like new assets that are coming online, you know, these 600 bed spaces with, beautiful green spaces, and you're saying that potentially planting and trees are not surviving. What else is there, do you think, that they can do to, I guess, help add to the cities, but also the spaces as well? Have you got any other kind of key tips?
Yeah, I think I like the soil sensor example, because it shows that, you know, we often see within landscape architecture and architecture in general, we see these beautiful renders. And then the question is, okay, well, once it's built, you know, what's the render versus reality? There's like incredible subreddits on this as well, where you can kind of compare the two, and sometimes the difference is pretty shocking, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the greenery that we plan to put in isn't always executed in the way that we want. So I think that aftercare of what we plant is not to be underestimated. And then I really like ways that citizens can actually get involved with their nature and understand it better. And I think when we understand it better, we're able to have more empathy for it, and therefore also the want to perhaps protect it better as well. So another technology that I'm quite excited about is coming out of the States. They're a company called Nature Quant. And what they've done on the basis of satellite imagery and a bunch of park data is they've created this really high resolution map of all of the nature within, right now, just the States, but they're coming over to Canada and Europe by the mid of next year. And so they've created this, and they've come up with a nature score. So based on any address, any lat-long point in the States, you can get an idea, okay, what is my access, what is the quality of the nature in my area? So that's just interesting to understand in and of itself, and I think especially for real estate developers in the urban development space, this is a really interesting data set to look at, because it gives you an indication of what kind of higher real estate values can I perhaps ask if I provide that access to quality green?
Mm-hmm.
And it's great to have that be seen on that level as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's also quite cool is they have a matching app called Nature Dose, which almost based on like how you might have a step counter in your health app or like a fitness tracker app, or you might have something that measures your heart rate during the day. This app works in the background by using your GPS location and gives you at the end of the day a score, your Nature Dose score. How much nature did you have that day?
Interesting, I love that.
And the idea is, could we perhaps encourage students, employees, people that, it's been shown, again, these benefits that, kids that have access to green during recess are able to concentrate much better, employees, students that are able to take breaks in green are able to be a lot more productive.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is we know that nature is medicine, but what is the dose? We really don't, that's a huge question that we still have in research.
Yeah.
And understanding, data on that level can not only help individuals understand, how much nature was I actually exposed to today, and perhaps next time instead of my commute through a street, perhaps I can take a park instead. It might take a little bit longer, but I know that those benefits are giving me that much more for a happier and healthy life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's especially interesting is when we look at the link with insurance companies as well. A lot of insurance companies, and especially when it comes to student health insurance plans, which I know the more we can keep health insurance on a budget, specifically for students, is great. And a lot of health insurers have already taken on things like step counters and heart rate monitors to actually provide you with benefits, either with a discount on your insurance monthly costs, or actually you can get gift cards for different places based on did you hit the 10,000 steps every day. So it's not only a way to a great incentive on the individual level to get out and get moving, but it's also great for their health, and that has a huge trickle down or trickle up effect, I should say, with the overall can we reduce our health costs. And so I think it's just incredible, both on a really systemic level, on a much more higher level, but also just on the individual level. And if that's already being done for can I get rewarded for taking 10,000 steps a day, perhaps we can move towards being rewarded for having a certain high enough nature dose score every day as well. So there's so much to do in this area. We're really just at the cusp of understanding what's possible.
I think it's quite interesting actually, because as part of the conference we're going to be looking at how we scale social value, and we're going to be digging a little bit deeper into ESG.
Right.
And one thing that I'm finding after talking to our partners all the time is, how do we measure ESG, and how do we, so not only from the non-financial side, but also measure it from the people in the buildings. So the Glass Foundation are doing some research on how to measure mental health, but I think if we can measure that for actually your green impacts and how much access you're having.
I think so too. I think it's the next frontier. And of course, you need to be clear in terms of how you go about data privacy, and these issues are of course critical as we move to using technology in this way. But I think if we look at it purely from what can we do both on that higher level and the individual level, it's super exciting.
Amazing. Have you got any anything last you'd like to say to our community? It's been amazing to have you here as well, so thank you so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we got the chance to get into 2 examples today, but there are tens of, perhaps even 100 different examples of how you can apply the Internet of Nature, different Internet of Nature technologies and applications. So I started a podcast a couple months ago, which I can definitely, for any podcast lovers out there, can definitely encourage them to check it out. It's called Internet of Nature Podcast, which essentially every week I interview a different entrepreneur or a different innovator that's using technology in a way to either better map, monitor, manage, or reconnect people to urban nature. And there's some incredible stories coming out of that, from city officials in Melbourne giving their trees email addresses, mainly to
Love
report
that.
issues, that then turned into people sending love letters to these trees.
Yes.
And I think it just shows that, this love for nature was already there, but technology just needed to bring it out.
Amazing, thank you so much. And Nadina has wrote an article as well within our trend report, so make sure you check that out too.